Oh, David, you've gone on mute now.
That better?
Perfect.
Good enough.
Good, good. So,
Gemma, a very warm welcome from us to you guys in Scotland. Thank you very much for taking out the time and having a few drams with us. The crew is assembled already here. We've poured some whiskey, and I think we're all very, very eager to have a few drams with you guys and listening to the stories. So without further ado, I'll hand over the word to you guys. And a big thank you again, and we're looking forward to having you drams.
Thank you, Andy. Okay, hello everybody. So I'm very excited for you all to see Kelsey's backdrop in a second. We're going to have a grand reveal. We're very lucky to be joined by David and by Kelsey this afternoon. So David's at home, broadcasting live from his home in Scotland, and Kelsey is at work right now, so she's going to join us. She's joining us from her sample room that her and David normally work from through just outside Glasgow. You've got 3 whiskies in front of you, so we're going to go through these and have a taste of each one and have a chat about them. I guess first of all, I'll start off just by talking a little bit about Balvenie in general. So has anyone, I know Melanie, you were there at the distillery with me last year. Has anyone else been to visit Balvenie who's joined us?
Yes.
A couple of you have, but most of you haven't. Well, Balvenie, it's sort of tucked away in the hills of Speyside. If you land into Aberdeen or Inverness Airport, you're about an hour's drive from the distillery. We were founded back in 1892. Oh, here's the grand reveal. This is what you guys have all been waiting for. So your bar, Dino's, is put to shame with the backdrop that Kelsey has right now. Hi, Kelsey.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep, loud and clear. Perfect.
yeah.
Nice to see everyone.
Great to see you. So I'll finish off just by talking a little bit about the background of Balvenie, and then we're going to hand over to Kelsey to chat about the first whiskey. But as I was saying, we were founded in 1892 by a man called William Grant. So he founded our sister distillery Glenfiddich only 5 years earlier. William Grant, he was born in Dufton, humble beginnings in 1839. Founded Glenfiddich in 1886, and then found himself a few years later in the position to set up that second distillery, which was to become the Balvenie. And now here we are, 5 generations of the family later, and David, Kelsey and I were immensely proud of the way that we make Balvenie. So if you do come and visit us at the distillery, if we were to transport you all to Balvenie right now, you'd land slap bang in the middle of our beautiful barley fields, which are lush green right now. So we grow a proportion of our own barley ourselves on site. We have traditional floor maltings where we're malting that barley in the traditional way at the distillery too. And when we get on to talk about Burnhead Wood, the whiskey we're celebrating here today, I'll talk a lot more in detail about the floor maltings and what that means for us at Balvenie. And then you can also see our own on-site cooperage as well. So for me, one of the most special things about the distillery is the fact that we can go down and see the coopers work. Every single cask of Balvenie is tended and maintained by our team of coopers on site. And then obviously we have the likes of David and Kelsey working with us. We're immensely privileged to have David join us today. David is now celebrating 58 years in the industry this year, and David and Kelsey work very closely together, and Kelsey's learning from David from his almost 6 decades of experience working with Balvenie. There's nobody else in the world who has the experience David obviously has with Balvenie. You've nosed casks from well, we've figured out you've nosed almost 500,000 casks of Balvenie in your career, right, David?
Yeah, that's right. In the sample room and at the distillery, just about 500,000 casks. Yeah, so it's quite a lot. My nose is still working as well. It's a good
Absolutely
thing.
Incredible. Well, if you guys have any questions as we're going through, please feel free to pitch in and ask us any questions that you have. I'll I'll hand over to Kelsey. I know you've all got whiskies in front of you. You're keen to get started and trying them. So I'll hand over to Kelsey to talk about the first one. So over to you, Kelsey.
Thank you. It's great actually to see everyone, and to be honest, today it's really one of the first times I've actually been able to see David in the past few months, isn't it? Just the way that we've been working, David, it's not been as easy, so it's been a lot of emails back and forth, but I'm sure you're missing this room.
Yeah, I am. That's right. I've not been there for about 3 or 4 months, to be fair. And it's a place I used to spend, maybe an hour and a half every day, and nosing all the samples that keep coming through from the distilleries. So yeah, I'm missing it. But hopefully over the next few months, I'll get back there again.
Absolutely, and we've just got a few samples left for you to get through, as you can see behind us. So there's plenty of work to be done anyway. But hopefully today everyone's got a few drams with them and we can get started. Does everyone have the 12-year-old hand?
Yes, we do.
There, good stuff. So just to chat everyone a little bit through the concept of 12 and actually how we had come around to launch it. It's definitely a few years ago now, but Brian, David and I were having a meeting around innovation and what we could do to create different flavours in the spirit. And although there's so much that we can do, and to that point of actually making the spirit, so when we make that new weight, that clear spirit, as soon as it runs off the stills, we can change the distillation cut points, fermentation times, our cereals, if that's what we wanted to do. We can change all of that. But we had this idea where we were saying, what could we do with mature spirit? So what could we add to 12-year-old spirit to really enhance the flavour? And so we thought we would reach out to our friends in Kelvin Cooperage out in Kentucky. And we said to them, why don't you make us some barrels, make us some beautiful virgin American oak casks. And that inside of the cask, when usually we would just give it that little bit of a char, we said to them, let's give it a really beautiful deep toast. So by char, I'm sure everyone knows what I'm talking about, but for anyone that doesn't, the inside of the cask, when we get that beautiful crocodile skin layer, we said, let's dial back the heat ever so slightly, but we'll expose the stage to prolonged heat so that we can drive off as much flavour as we can. So we asked them to give them a toast and send them over to Scotland, where we filled them with 12-year-old Balvenie, and we left them to finish. So every month, I don't know if you can see the samples behind us, the way that we've got them sitting out, the samples beside us at the moment. Every month we do cask finishes, and it's a similar process to the ones that we've got out, in which we draw lots of random samples from casks that we've finished. We bring them back to our nosing room, and we tip them all together basically so that we have a composite sample of how that batch of spirit's maturing. So we did the exact same thing with the 12-year-old American toast. We brought it back, and after about 4 to 6 weeks, we could say straight away that something really special had happened. The colour had really jumped right up, and for everyone, I see a few of us have already went ahead quite right. If we give it a wee nose, you can see that it's lovely, beautiful vanilla, toasted oak, that absolutely gorgeous, all of those beautiful flavours that we get from Balvenie. We really wanted to accentuate them. So because we've exposed it to American oak, the way that we get with bourbon, when we get quite a punchy upfront flavour, we wanted to touch on that a little bit, but we don't want to create anything that isn't unrecognisable for any Balvenie creation or to be part of our family. So when we created it, we wanted to make sure it had that really intense sweet vanilla nose that we're talking about, but off the back of that, we wanted lots of vanilla, honey, those little marzipan notes that we always talk about, and a little bit of citrus spice to come through. So if we give it a quick nose, we should get those initial punchy flavours. And then just off the back of that, we'll get a little bit more citrus coming through. And for me, it's absolutely been one of the most exciting projects to work on. Just as a little bit of background, I've actually been working in the team. How long will it be now, David? Maybe about 4 years.
4 or 5, yeah, 4 or 5 years, yeah.
4 or 5 years, and I've been at Royal Grants just about 6, 7. And so I actually started the team doing the blending for all of our variants. I work closely with Brian Kinson as well, our Konferenz master, our master blender. And so I have such an amazing job of working on a lot of projects behind the scenes. So whenever we see a new product coming online, which we've seen since it's been in its cask sample, so just like this, no sexy label at this stage, when we work on anything like that and you see it come through and you can see it on the shelf, you obviously get that really puffed out chest. I was part of that feeling. But for this one, it has just been so exciting, especially for it to be the launch of a new series. 12 for me is just been absolutely fantastic, and I hope you agree that the liquid tastes amazing.
Good, good.
Does anyone have any questions, or what's the consensus? I'll take a cheers in the air if we like it.
Cheers. Lunch.
Unfortunately, I've not got any whiskey at home. I've not got this whiskey, so I can't share it with Kelsey.
We talked about that yesterday, right? So
Yes.
The malt he doesn't have a whiskey at home.
That's it.
Well, it's no good, David. We've just got a few bottles in here, so as you can see behind me, we've got everything that's been filled into this room. It's been filled in sort of the last year or so. So we definitely just have a few bottles in here.
Yeah, we got 12,000 sample bottles in the sample room, I think it is.
Yeah, about that. And then we have an archive through the back, and we think it has about 20,000 in there. So just a few.
Yes.
Do you guys share that sample room?
With whom?
One sample room, but you and David work together?
Oh, sorry, I couldn't hear you there.
So say that again.
Is that sample room something where you work together? So it's one sample room, and you both are basically working in there.
Yes. Yeah, it's one sample room. It's a big sample room. It's on the top floor of our offices, and it's a lovely open window which shines a lot of light into it, and you can see behind Kelsey there. All the samples, a lot of the samples are behind glass there, and we're just below that. You can see there's drawers where we've got more samples in there as well. So we've got bottling samples, we've got new spirit samples, we've got vatting samples, blend samples, warehouse samples. So we're generally getting in maybe about 30 samples on a daily basis from the new spirit from the distilleries. You know, that's from Balvenie, from Glenfiddich, Kinninvie, Ales of Bay, Girvan Grain. And of course, as Kelsey mentioned, we're looking at the finishes every month. That's a double wood 12 and 17 Caribbean cask and portwood, and we're single barrels. We've got a single barrel range, so there's hundreds of these single barrels appearing in on a regular basis as well. So for me, I'm only looking at Balvenie, but Kelsey's looking at all the distilleries, the 5 distilleries. Kelsey's looking at the blended whiskies that come up from our grain distillery down in Gervan. Obviously, all the Glenfiddich samples that are coming in from the Glenfiddich distillery, Glenfiddich bottling samples. So we spend probably out of an 8-hour day, we might spend a couple of hours every day, an hour in the morning, an hour in the afternoon, probably in the sample room. So it's a lovely place to be, and it gets us away from our desk, away from our laptops and computer screens, and it's a nice diversion, and we're really very lucky that we have this lovely sample room to actually work in.
Absolutely, and the one thing that I always find amazing, so especially when I first started in this room, any product that we ever create starts off its life on this very bench. So we usually see samples, like we were saying, they'll come in like this, and at that point we'll sample them, so we'll nose them, we'll taste them, see how they taste and how we like them, and see whether they need longer in that finishing wood or whether it's a little bit too intense and we need to dial back that flavour. So especially when I started in the team, I found it amazing to know that every product, whether it's one of our distilleries up north, our distilleries in the lowlands, anything, our Irish spirits, American spirits, any gin products, rums, everything starts off its life in this little room. So it's amazing to think about how many Balvenie variants have started their life just on this island.
Yeah, that's true.
You have a question?
A question, can you hear me?
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, what role does Kinninvie play in your sample room?
What role does Kinninvie play?
in your sample room.
Yeah, and Canopy acts the same as any of our other distilleries. So we obviously continue to make the spirit. We have a huge emphasis on new make spirit. So, for example, this clear spirit, I'm sure everyone here is familiar with it. So we treat Canopy the same way we do as any other distilleries. We have a huge focus on new make spirit. Is that a bottle of new make right there?
Okay, you make.
Sneaking into screen.
Mm-hmm.
A huge focus on new make spirit, so we treat Canopy the exact same. We bring it in and make sure that it's into spec and fill it into cask. We continue to sample it throughout maturation. And of course, as we said before, everything in this room is nosed prior to becoming one of our single malts, one of our blends, one of our blended malts. So depending on what we're using Canopy for, we'll make sure that whenever we have it tipped and it goes into the final product, it's absolutely how we would like it to nose and taste.
Kelsey, David, could you comment, since the team have the opportunity to try the new make with Andy, comment a little bit on what you're looking for when you're sampling the Balvenie new make?
Okay, well, first of all, we're looking for consistency. So Balvenie's got a lovely sort of estery sweetness, malty sweetness. So every time we actually put new spirit into the spirit receiver, Kelsey and I will get a sample of it. So we're getting samples, every other day from the Balvenie distillery, and we nose it, and generally, it is very consistent, and that's the main thing for us. We're creating a consistently tasting and nosing Balvenie new spirit that will then go into bourbon casks or sherry casks to mature. So yes, so it's very important. The new spirit is very important for us. And that's the first bit that I look at, really, as the new spirit, and then we're following on to looking at aged whiskey from the warehouse, looking at our bottling samples, vintage samples, single barrels, but making the new spirit is very important to make it consistent.
So actually, for you guys that are here, there's one glass to the low left side. There's actually Balvenie new make in there. You can try that if you want, just to see the character that Balvenie has when it comes fresh off the stills.
Okay, so just remember that it'll be probably 70%, so it'll be pretty strong. So we in the sample we'll always dilute our whiskey. So we're trying to bring we're always looking at the strength of the whiskey, and that determines how much water we need to add to it. So we're probably bringing our whiskey down to somewhere about 25% alcohol, between 25 and 30% alcohol to nose it. Adding water opens up the whiskey and releases more. So if you're nosing something at 70%, you might find it a little bit tricky just to get the full effect of it. So if you have any water there, don't be frightened to add a little bit. I would almost add the same amount of water again to reveal the flavors of it.
I've actually done a few tastings already where I've had people try the new make, and a lot of the people say it's actually very nice as it is. So it's not as powerful or spirit forward that you would imagine it. It's a very soft spirit, even for 70 plus or 70.
Yeah, I agree.
That's
I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky. Yeah.
Ja. Warum verdünnen?
I have another question. How did the idea of the story series come to existence?
Well, I guess I could answer that. I've worked on I've been very lucky in my position as global ambassador to start working with David and Kelsey and the global Balvenie team when we started to think about this concept of the story series with Balvenie, and it really celebrates David, Kelsey, the team at Balvenie who make our whiskies. So every single, Kelsey's got 12,000 samples of drawn directly from the cask behind her. Every single one of our whiskies has a story behind it. So whether that's the story of the people that made it, how it was made, and the team at Balvenie, you know, we've got more than 1,000 years of experience of whiskey making if you're to add up the amount of years everybody has dedicated. So with David, as we said, it's his 58th year this year. We talk a lot about one of our most legendary characters at the Balvenie distillery is a man called Dennis Mcbain, who's actually our coppersmith for many, many years. And Dennis joined us back in 1958, and he's really one of the storytellers that we the distillery, and has a lot of incredible stories from over the years about things that he's done and things that he's seen. And so the story series really it's a celebration of all of the people at Balvenie and their stories. So if you have a look and you explore, I mean, even just the packaging itself, so this sort of outer packaging that's created by an artist called Andy Lovell. So we work with a screen printer who's based in Gloucestershire in England, and he has come up and spent a lot of time with us at the distillery. He spent time painting yourself, David. Actually, you're one of his models for one of our whiskies that we'll release at a later date. But Andy, he's a screen printer and incredibly talented. So the way that the image is created, he actually paints each part and layers it together through using a printing method. We can pass you the details of him if you want to know any more information about Andy. But just even from that initial outer packaging, we wanted it to look almost like a book cover. In the way that the painting was, and then you have the story and the information on the back about each of the whiskies as well. And it's been such an incredible journey to kind of learn more and discover more about each of these whiskies and explore stories and things that have happened over the years.
Mm-hmm.
So
very good.
You've obviously both yourself, David, and Kelsey have developed this whole range of whiskies over the last few years.
Yes, it's been quite exciting times for us. Yeah, we've been quite busy with creating new expressions. You know, there was 3 came out already last year, I think, and Edge of Burnhead Wood this year. And as you mentioned, we've got another 2 or 3 in the pipeline, which have been delayed at the moment due to the circumstances that we're all in at the moment. So they may be delayed till the end of the year, even to next year before they might come out. So yeah, so it's quite exciting times. So I mean, it's Kelsey, as Gemma mentioned, I've been with the company a long time. So I got the malt master job for Balvenie in 1974, and that's just a year after we launched the very first Balvenie, which was the Founder's Reserve, 8 years old, which we launched in 1973. So back then we only had one Balvenie. And I think today we've probably got roughly about 25 different expressions out there in the world. So it's for Kelsey and Brian and I, it was a bit more challenging than it was way back, 40 odd years ago. So Kelsey, my job and Kelsey's job is really to kind of is maintaining the consistent quality of the Balvenie, and also looking at creating new expressions as well, and that's really what. And I've spent a lot of time visiting. I'm not based at the distillery. I'm based at where Kelsey is. I'm based just in the outskirts of Glasgow. But I do spend quite a lot of time at the distillery, meeting people, meeting journalists, VIP visits, do some distillery tours. So, I'm based in Glasgow, where the sample room is. So if you're ready to move on to the 14 years old week of peat, I can take you through that if everyone's ready to start on that one.
Actually, I forgot to mention earlier, we've switched it around. So we'll do the peat at last. We do the peat as last one. So because of the peat, we don't want to.
Okay, you're keeping that to the end.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. So it's more.
So we're gonna, myself included, will be the first ones in Austria to try this. I'm looking forward to it. I have not had a sip yet. So we're for now.
So we're going to try Burnhead Wood now. Is that right? So I have a little glass of the 19. So I'm going to lead you guys through the story of the Edge of Burnhead Wood. And if I'm right, you have, I think Andy told us you only have 60 bottles in all of Austria of this specific whiskey. So very excited to be able to talk to you about it. It's 19 years old. Kind of tell you a little bit about the whiskey, and then we can move on to the story. So what you have in your glass, it's 19 years old at the moment, and we've bottled this at 47.8%. It's matured in 100% American oak, and you truly have a little piece of Balvenie history in your glass, because not only do you have a limited number of bottles over there in Austria, but there's actually a limited number of bottles of these globally. So back in 2000, when we distilled this whiskey, we only filled 50 casks. So there was 50 casks of this that kind of went tucked away into our warehouse, patiently maturing until this year. We bottled half of them, and we'll bottle the rest of them next year. And then that will be it. So we unfortunately can never repeat this. So it's something very special for us to be able to share together. The story of this whiskey. So it started really back in 1999. In 1999, we harvested a batch of barley that had actually been grown on the Balvenie estate. So also what you have is one of the first Balvenies in many, many years that has been produced from 100% homegrown, home malted barley. So every single grain has come from Balvenie. So there's fields that sit just above the distillery. And we have one field in particular that's called the Louise. In the Louise field, so back in spring 1999, our farmers, they sowed the barley in the field over summer, grew lush and green. So if we were to go back to summer this time, back in 1999, right now the barley fields in Speyside are absolutely stunning. They're so lush, so green. Come autumn time, when we harvest that barley, beautiful golden fields. We harvested the barley 1999, and then that barley lay dormant in our malt loft until the following spring. So the following spring, something interesting happened, which David was a part of. Back in the late 90s, early 2000s, we had a distillery manager who maybe some of you guys know. His name is Ian Miller. He's quite infamous within the whiskey industry. But Ian was our distillery manager for a number of years. And he was very excited to take on the mantle as distillery manager at Balvenie, because he'd had a number of years of experience working across many distilleries in the industry in Scotland, but he'd never had his own distillery to manage that had a working floor maltings. So this was something that filled him with excitement back in the late 90s, early 2000s when he joined us. He saw the floor maltings, where many at Balvenie saw the floor maltings as something which upheld traditions in the whiskey industry. Ian saw the floor maltings as an opportunity for experimentation. So he collaborated with David and the team and started a series of experiments where they started to play around and experiment with our whiskey at the point of distillation, and conducted a series of different trials within the floor maltings. One of them, the result of what you have in your glass right now. So in spring 2000, one of our team members who worked alongside Ian and alongside David was a man called Dave Stewart, who definitely not to be confused with David Stewart. Dave Stewart is head of our estates at the time, and today he's actually our archivist at the Balvenie distillery. So more than 40 years later, Dave still works with us here at Balvenie. Actually, I should sidetrack and tell you, we should tell a little bit of a story here, David. In 2016, something very, very special happened, something we're immensely proud of at Balvenie. Dave Stewart got a letter through the door at the distillery, and the letter had come to him from the Queen herself to advise him that he was being awarded with an MBE for his services to Scotch whisky. Now, Dave pulled the letter open and he thought, this can't be for me. It turns out that letter had gone to the wrong David Stewart within the company. It was supposed to be delivered to David Stewart, malt master, not head of estates at Balvenie. So in 2016, David went to Holyrood Palace and you shook hands with the Queen, didn't you? And she awarded you member of the British Empire for your services to the industry.
Yeah. Very proud day. I'm not going to forget in a hurry, to be fair. So yeah, that was quite a bit of a, because you meant to keep this secret over the few months earlier that you get this and that you get this letter. So Dave Stewart up at the distillery knew about it. He passed it down to SPP. He didn't actually tell me what was in the letter. I was in Chicago at the time. We just emailed me, sorry, what were one of your letters, David? Which has happened before, to be fair. I said, just send it down to SPP, to my secretary down there, and I'll get it when I come back. And so two people already knew about it before I hardly knew about it. So yeah, it was quite a bit of a confusion at the time, but all turned out in the long run fine. Yeah.
And we certainly created a bit of a stir with the launch of this whiskey, because people now think we're calling you Dave. David, I've saw on some different whiskey forums, people are like, wow, David's now Dave.
Yes, because they've got both of our names, I think, on the tube, haven't they? Got Dave, but not, and David, so yeah.
So back to 2000, not David, climbed up the hill in front of Balvenie to the edge of the wood there, which is called Burnhead Wood. And he cropped a whole batch of fresh spring heather, took it back down to our where we stored it for a few months. And then our maltman at the time, a man called Robbie Gormley, he took, so that, remember I talked about that special batch of barley that we'd grown from the Berry Lees, the single field on the estate, the Berry Lees field. So Robbie, he took that barley, put it through the whole malting process, and once it was into the kiln and he was drying it, he actually layered up the kiln with some of that heather that Dave had cropped from up on the hill. So we used some heather in the kiln as we dried the barley. Beautiful. Robbie describes the smoke from the heather and in the kiln kind of rising up, beautiful blue plumes of smoke passing up through the barley, through the malt as it was drying. And then we sent that batch on to distill as normal. So that would go on to the distillery team to mill, mash, ferment, distill, all as normal. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we filled those 50 American oak casks back in autumn, in August 2000, finally with that spirit that had been produced. And it lay there to rest until it arrived in our glasses now. So we're very excited to share this whiskey with everybody and with you guys. Hopefully, please have a nose, please have a taste of it. I'll maybe hand over to Kelsey actually and David to talk a bit more about the flavor of this, the flavor profile, and why this one stands out a little bit compared to the others.
Okay, do you want to do that? Got me to talk through it? Okay. Let me. Yeah. So this it's been filled. It was filled in American oak casks. So it's all American oak. So you tend to get that vanilla sort of fruity sweetness from American oak cask. But I think with this one here, you get an extra sort of depth of sweetness that comes through in this one. So for me, I've got vanilla. Balvenie is noted for being a honeyed a single malt, so generally you'll find honey in Balvenie. So there's vanilla, there's honey. I get some sort of butterscotch, brown sugar, maple syrup, all these lovely flavors that you get from American oak casks, and it's just been slightly accentuated by the using heather in the drying process. So I get a slightly sweeter flavor than you might expect from a normal filling of 19-year-old in an American oak barrel. So it's got all these lovely sweet, fruity, honey, vanilla, butterscotch, caramel, toffee notes. So have a sip of it. Any questions about it? Kelsey and I and Gemma are here to answer them, or any comments. If you hopefully you'll all like the whiskey. That's the main thing.
Absolutely. And just before David, you were in a little bit of fast motion there, so I missed you in chat before, but as David said, everything that we're talking about with actually producing the spirit, a question that we're often asked is, do you know how much of the flavour is actually coming from the heather and how much is coming from the cask? And it's a really great point, because for us, when we talk about heather, we don't want anyone to get the impression that it's going to be really big, full-on floral flavours. For us, it's definitely an underlying tone, as David was mentioning. We want the initial note and the flavour to be true Balvenie, but as we were saying, it does have that extra layer of depth. And you can get a little bit more sweetness, a little bit of subtle nutty flavour coming through as well. But on the whole, it's absolutely beautiful. And as we were saying, because it's finished in American oak, it's absolutely gorgeous, and it still has that true Balvenie DNA, so that true distillery character that we always talk about as well. So for me, it's a perfect balance between the two.
Yeah.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers to you.
Okay, hope you're all enjoying it.
One question. You mentioned 50 casks this expression was made of. Were they all first fill?
No, I don't think they were all first fill. I think they're second fill American oak casks. It's second fill American oak barrels. Yeah.
The wood comes through very powerfully.
Another question is that comes to me is, do you use the complete barley from the estate only for this whiskey, or is the barley used for some other kinds of whiskey that you produce?
It's a good question. This is the first time that we've really released one of the whiskies that we've produced completely from the barley on the estate. It's something we've done regularly. So for the last number of years, every year we've processed, segregated a batch that's homegrown and home malted and processed that through the distillery. We haven't released that or done anything with that, but it's sitting, maturing away in casks as well. So we have a legacy now of stock of whiskies that have been set aside year on year that are 100% from the estate.
So that means we can look forward for the next batches.
Perhaps. We can't recreate this Burnhead Wood, can we, David?
No,
there's not been an experiment done again like this, but hopefully, one day we will see more Balvenies that have been produced from 100% homegrown barley.
Yeah.
We were actually having a little bit of a joke about that as well, weren't we, David, about potential innovations that come down the line. And obviously, I'm just starting out. It's very early on, and hopefully a long career at Balvenie for me. But all of these ones that everyone, yourselves, are raving about, you never know, they might make an appearance in another 19, 20 years.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I'm sure they will. Yeah, I'm sure they will. Yeah, yeah.
Steal David's innovation ideas.
But it's something that's been really exciting to see, because bringing back, so highlighting some of these techniques that were done, we're benefiting today from the work that you did, David, 20 years, even 30. We have the Day of Dark Barley, which was one of the stories that released last year, distilled in 1992 from a batch of barley that would typically be used for stout or a dark beer. So, again, that's another experiment that we didn't repeat at the time, but certainly something exciting about the stories range and discovering interesting things that were done over the years is inspiring conversations today for what we could do for the future.
Yes, that's it. Because most of what we've done at the Balvenie is being at the end of the process, using casks, sherry casks, port casks, rum casks, Madeira, new oak. So we did want to do some things at the very beginning. Okay, when you do that, you're going to have to wait years and years and years. And its occasion, it's 19 years, and for the Day of Dark Barley, 26 years. And of course, we've got the peated whiskey as well. But we wanted to do some things at the distillation stage as well, together with cask finishing as well at the Balvenie. So some of these things that we did at the beginning, all of them now have all got into a bottle now, and which is quite exciting. So how is everyone enjoying the 19 years old Burnhead Wood?
Fantastic, very good one.
The wood one is great one.
Okay.
It's also for me, it's nice to have something a little stronger. I do like with a little bit more ABV.
Yeah, because it is a little bit stronger than the Burnhead Wood. So it's, yeah, but being 19 years old, it probably, I might have had a little dash of water to it, but being 19 years old, it shouldn't need too much water. It should be very smooth as it is, even though it's 47, 48%.
And it always amazes me as well with these older drams, whenever we bottle them, and they are actually at a higher ABV, because they've been allowed to sleep longer in the casks, and we've allowed any of those sharp flavours potentially that we don't like in new make, although I'm hearing that apparently everyone's loving the new make, so good to know. But any of those sharp flavours that we get as soon as we distill the spirit and we allow them to sleep and mature in the casks, they flash off because they just naturally evaporate off into the environment, and then we're left with a beautifully sweet, smooth dram. So especially with these older ones, where as soon as we taste it, we always get that mouth-coating effect, and it's absolutely beautiful. It can often trick us into not believing how high the ABV actually is.
Yeah.
Bit of different question, if I may. Andy indicated that we can look for other stories, expressions in travel retail. I mean, no one is traveling today, but anyway, is that true?
Yes, it is. They probably would have been released round about now, to be fair, if we hadn't had the issues that we've got at the moment and people not travelling through airports. Am I allowed to say what they are, Gemma?
Yes.
It's
up to you. It's up to you, David. You're the boss.
Well, no, as I mentioned at the start, we started out with the Balvenie Founders Reserve, and that took us all the way through the 70s. And then I was asked to create another range of Balvenie in the early 80s, and that was called the Balvenie Classic. So we did 3 Balvenie Classics. We did a no-way statement, a 12 and an 18 years old Balvenie Classic in a different shape bottle than we currently use today. And that word finish wasn't used then, but these were all finished in sherry casks. And that really was the start of our company, finishing whiskey. And the 12-year-old classic, evolved 10 years later into the double wood 12 years old. So one of the stories to be released at some stage over the next few months is the No Way Statement Balvenie Classic, which Kelsey and I have been working on. So it's a sherry finish, so it's roughly between 8 and 10 years old Balvenie, the same as it was way back in 1983. And so that's one that we're working on, and it's almost ready now, to be fair, but it won't be bottled just immediately. The other one is, if people remember, we did a Balvenie Rose. This is to celebrate the single red rose that around about the Balvenie Castle. So back in, when was that, Gemma? What was the year that we did?
The 15th century.
No, sorry, when did we release it?
I thought that's the story of the rose. The whiskey was released in 2008, the first Balvenie Rose.
So okay, so this is a Balvenie. If we wanted to create a kind of slightly reddish, pinkish Balvenie, so we actually filled that whiskey into port pipes, old tawny port pipes, and let it sit there. I think it was a 16 years old, was it? 16 years old Balvenie, filled at cask strength, been finished in port pipes, and you only could buy it when you came to the distillery, went on the Balvenie tour, and you could go into the Balvenie shop and buy it. So it was quite very limited. I think we maybe did 3 of them, and the strengths were all in the mid-50s. So we're now going to release another Balvenie Rose as well, but this time it's being finished in red wine casks, and it's a 21 years old Balvenie Rose. So it's going to be slightly different, being filled in red wine casks as opposed to portwood. But again, we're quite happy with the way it's turned out. It's got a lovely pinkish reddish colour, and again, it's pretty much ready to be bottled. But again, it'll be we were left for a wee while. We've got 2 more finishes. We've got a PX sherry, a PX sherry finish, 18-year-old, and we've got a Madeira, 15 years old. And these are pretty much ready as well now. So there's 4 Balvenies that will be coming out over the next, let's say, year, once we get through the situation we're in at the moment. And I'm sure there'll be others, maybe further. Kelsey's got a few ideas and plans ahead, you know.
But no, I was just going to say, as David has mentioned, we've got so much spirit ready to go that, you know, we're all over here, Gemma, David and I, are very excited to be able to launch it. So can't wait. And hopefully we're in better times and we can actually get a lot of products back into GTR and back into the market.
Yes. Good. So how are we doing? Do we need to move on to the peated expression?
It is in the glass.
You've got it in the glass?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about this. So again, we wanted to do something a little bit different at the beginning of the process. So we decided, well, why don't we just take 1 week out in a year and make a peated expression, make some peated new spirit Balvenie. And so we started experimenting in the early 2000s in our own maltings, and we were quite happy with the way it sort of came through on the new spirit. So really from the 2002, September 2002, and every year since then, for 1 week, we've made a slightly smoky Balvenie. Now it's nothing like an Islay malt. It's something like 5 or 6 ppm phenol levels. So nothing like a Lafroig or a Lagavulin or an Arbeck. So it's a very delicate smokiness. But we've got this whiskey in American oak barrels. We've got some of it in sherry casks. And I think it was in 2017 we actually launched a 14-year-old called Peat Week, and which was all American oak barrels. That was for domestic markets. We also did a triple peated cask for travel retail, which had a percentage of European oak sherry casks in it. So that was Peat Week. So we had that for maybe a couple of years. And so now we're on to the week of peat. So we're moving on from, you're probably using 2005 whiskey now instead of 2002 at the very beginning. So we always keep stock back. So I forgot to mention we're going to do a 17-year-old a week of peat as well shortly, and we'll still have stock back that someday Kelsey might do a 25-year-old week of peat or even a 50-year-old week of peat someday. So we always like to hold stock back. So each year we keep moving on. So this is probably filled in. This is probably a 2005 filling. Again, it's American oak, and it's ideal phenol levels for us, but we didn't want to dominate the Balvenie. We want to still have what people know about Balvenie, the honey, the vanilla, and the citrus notes, but have this delicate smokiness in the background. So we know that it's fairly faint on the nose, but when you actually taste it, you'll get that nice delicate smoky note. And anyone who likes sort of peaty, smoky whiskies should enjoy this. And as I say, we've been taking a week out at the distillery every year to just make a peated spirit. So we've got stock for over the last 17, 18 years now of peated whiskey, and we'll just gradually release that at different ages over the years ahead. So has anyone tried it?
Yes.
Okay.
And has anyone tried 17 before?
No.
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 We don't have 17 in Austria.
Not yet. Okay.
Double would, yes, but not a peated one.
Okay. So how's the smoky whiskey going down? I mean, do you get that delicate smokiness coming through?
Yes,
Yeah, of course.
Of course.
You do? Okay.
Yes.
Are quite a number of you sort of like that kind of style of whiskey, or do you prefer the more Speyside, fruity, sweet whiskies?
For me, my personally have to say, depends on the occasion.
Okay.
There's no such bad Balvenie.
Okay. That's something that depends on the mood you're in and what kind of whiskey you fancy trying.
But it's fine, it's very unusual. I wouldn't guess probably it's Balvenie, because we have to say.
Okay. Well, anything.
To compare, as David was saying, peated Balvenie throughout the years. We often get asked if peat changes as it matures, and we actually notice that when it's maturing in casks, we don't actually see that ppm. So as David was mentioning before, sort of around 5 ppm, we actually don't see that reduced throughout the years. But with that extra maturation, it does add another level of depth to the spirit. So if we ever have the opportunity to have two Balvenies of the same peated spirit at different ages, it's actually really nice to go back and forth between the two and compare.
Yes, I agree.
Would the week of peat in taste style be quite similar to the peat week that has been before?
Yes, they're both at 14, so they're both American oak. So some first fill bourbons, second fill bourbons, third fill bourbons probably in there. So it's all American oak. Okay. So the only change really is in the name really. I'm just trying to remember, I haven't got a bottle here, so I can't remember what the strength was. Do you remember, Gemma or Kelsey? Is it 40%?
The same. They're 48.3.
Is it 48.3? Is it okay?
Is this real cask strength, or did you bring it down with water?
It's not cask strength. No, we'll have brought it down a bit. Cask strength would be mid 50s and slightly higher than that probably. So we do occasionally. The tons tend to be, and when we say ton expression, tend to be cask strength. Mm-hmm. And obviously the 50-year-olds it's cask strength, but here we brought it down to a similar level to our single barrels, which are all 47.8. So mm-hmm. There is an addition of a little bit of water to it.
Okay.
And I mean, you still have a
Has anyone here tried the vintage statement before that I was talking about? Andreas, do you know? So when we used to do it from a vintage year, has anyone tried that? Do you know, Gemma? Anyone would have that in this market? So we used to do a vintage statement on the peat week.
Okay, well, 2002, 2003, okay.
Yeah, so that was just thinking about before. It's just if anyone has that, it's a good comparison. So when you were asking if the flavour is different, actually looking at it and how it compares over the years, it's quite nice.
Yes, okay.
With us taking the vintage statement off of it, you're actually in a position where you don't have to use specific years anymore. We could actually use a combination of different years, but it just means, as David was mentioning about consistency, it just means that we have consistency in the spirit going forward.
Yeah. Very good.
And it was really Week of Peat and also Burnhead Wood. They were the two stories that inspired the entire range, because going back to the kind of around the similar time, that's when David and Ian, who was distillery manager at the time, having conversations about experimentation in the floor maltings. So yes. They're the two whiskies that really inspired the rest of the range.
That's true.
And we had obviously Week of Peat already within the portfolio that we'd released, but it was such an incredible story that we decided to bring that into the fold of the stories series.
Yeah.
Yeah, because for us it meant we finally got it in Austria, so I'm quite happy with that.
Okay.
Happy days.
No, we didn't have Peat Week before, so now with the Week of Peat, we have it now in the portfolio. So I'm quite happy, and people are quite happy to have it.
Okay, good. Glad it's being enjoyed.
I just talked earlier to Mary, and she told me she even has the old bottlings of the Caribbean cask, so the Cuban barrel.
With the Caribbean cask.
An old bottling that said Cuban barrel.
The forbidden one.
Okay, the Cuban cask.
Yeah.
Okay, that's okay. That was bottled quite a long time ago now. Balvenie Cuban cask. Yeah, is that the one you're talking about, or you're talking about the Caribbean cask?
The Cuban. She still has a bottle.
Okay. Because that was bottled, I think, for France. The Balvenie Cuban cask quite a number of years ago. Yeah.
Like the Glenfiddich Havana.
Okay, the 21 years old, yes. Yeah, we had a number of we had a golden cask as well in travel retail before the triple cask, and that used a different blend of rums from our current Caribbean cask. But it's very popular, the Caribbean cask. It's a lovely, sweet, really sweet whiskey. Not as spicy as double wood, but it's a nice, sweet, easy to drink Balvenie. So it's good. It's very popular. People enjoy it.
Yeah, but it's the same for the 12-year-old American oak and the stories. It's for people that are getting into whiskey and starting with whiskey. It's a perfect starter. It has these sweet notes. It is a little bit oaky, but the sweetness and the oily texture is for somebody getting to know whiskey is a perfect start.
Yes, I agree. Very good.
I have a totally different question, if I may, and you can refuse to discuss that topic. How about a ton 1509 continuation now?
Yeah, well, we've got batch 7. I think we've got in the ton at the moment. Now, I'm just not sure the exact status of it. Do you know, Kelsey, if it's been bottled, is it still in the ton?
Still in the ton at the moment.
Okay, so we probably delayed it again, just with the circumstances at the moment. So as far as we know, the ton expressions are going to carry on. We did 9 of the 1401s, and we're now on batch 7 of the 1509s. And that's using some of our aged Balvenie from our warehouses. Most of them are subtly different. We're not looking for consistency, we're looking more for quality there. And so batch 7 will be different from batch 6. 6 is different from batch 5. Some have got more of the European oak, and others have got more American oak, and other slightly different combination of ages. But it's using some of our older ages of Balvenie in limited quantities in this ton that's in warehouse 24 at the Balvenie distillery. So batch 7 should be coming out over the next few months, I would imagine.
Okay. And the Asian version, the 1858, that's gone, that's finished, yeah?
Yes, that's the ones that went to Asia, Taiwan and China. Yeah, I think the last one we bottled was the last one. Yeah. Which was probably bottled last year. Yeah, so I think 1858, I think, has been stopped. Yeah.
One question for me, though, also with the 19-year-old Burnhead Wood and the 2060-year dark barley. So basically, next year will be the last batches for both.
Probably. You want to answer that, Gemma? Probably. I mean, as Gemma mentioned it already, we only made so much of it. The day of dark barley, we actually bottled some of that as the Balvenie roasted malt back in 2006 as a 14-year-old. So some of it was used, let's say 14 years ago or 12 years ago. So they will run out next year. The day of dark barley, these are bottled as single casks, so we bottle 1 barrel at a time, a little bit like our single barrel range. So I think probably by the end of next year, pretty much both of them will be gone. So it'll be a good one if anyone wants to get a bottle and keep it and collect it, it might someday might be worth a little bit, because it's quite limited.
The warehouse in that last bottling, but it's good to know they're heading out into market and we'll keep filling it with more renovations.
Yes, that's it.
That's something, certainly our stories series is here to stay, and we're having conversations, you know, about what the future is going to hold. So what we'll see once we have no more dark barley, no more Burnhead Wood, what do we have that will come in to replace that? So for sure, watch this space in the future, because we'll see some more exciting whiskies come out as part of this series.
Well, I'm quite sure with over 120 years, there is definitely a few stories to tell, and I'm sure they won't run out.
One request, actually, I've had quite a few people talking about, so we have one of probably the most famous characters at the Balvenie distillery is someone called the Green Lady. Now, she is our ghost that haunts our floor maltings. And I've had a few conversations recently with people who've said, when is the story of the Green Lady gonna be bottled? So there's one for us to think about.
Okay.
Celebrating our ghost in liquid form.
We'll just sell empty bottles, Gemma.
So get your thinking cap on, Kelsey. No, we won't have a green whiskey, I don't think.
We'll leave a nail in it. I don't know if you are in the distillery. We see sometimes if we're sampling old stock, we'll get a very green one from the iron. So if iron's obviously if a nail creeps into the cask, obviously that never happens now. But we can see just the colour of the spirit gets a little bit of a greeny tinge to it.
Oh, well,
Touched by the Green Lady.
Exactly.
That's it. Good.
Any more questions that we can answer for you all?
When are you coming to us here?
Yeah. When will your bars reopen again?
When will our bars reopen? So our bars are going to reopen, is it next Friday in Scotland? 15th of July is the...
Okay. A couple of weeks away.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
It's gotta be interesting in Scotland.
Yes.
Well, I grew up on an island called the Isle of Lewis on the west coast, and hearing stories from my friends about the last night the pubs were open. So just as we were going into lockdown, it was like what a Friday night was the last night. Friday was 20th of March was when the pubs closed here. And my friend said it was like the pubs were busier than New Year or Christmas combined. Everybody was out, and it was a huge party on the island, like with everyone making the most of the last night of the pubs. So I can't imagine what it's going to be like when they reopen again.
Yes.
The sight of a bar is making us very jealous, let me tell you. It looks fantastic. I wish we could trade places.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we'll all be missing the bars and restaurants, to be fair. So yeah, it'll be slightly different when they reopen again, having to keep this meter or 2 meters apart. It'll be slightly different, but we'll wait and see how it evolves.
Just from our experience, we did the whole 1 meter apart kind of thing. As you can see,
Nobody cares about.
Right. That's it.
no baby elephants. So I think 2 weeks after places opened, that was.
Yeah, I think down in England at the moment, they've put it down to 1 meter, but in Scotland, I think at the moment it's still 2 meters apart. Maybe when the bars open on the 15th of July, by that time they might have agreed to make it 1 meter apart. So we'll wait and see. But yeah, it's a difficult situation for us all at the moment.
Your family's grows to be there.
Yeah.
And a question from Melanie was also, and I will extend that also. When are you going to come and visit us in Austria?
Oh, Melanie, Andy, we'd love to come and visit you guys. I think the three of us, once we can travel again, it would be such an honor to come and visit you in Vienna. I've actually never been.
We'll set up something colleagues here.
Yeah, I've been once to Vienna, but there was a lot, as I said to you, Andy, yesterday. It's a long time ago. I was out in Glenfiddich when I was responsible for Glenfiddich at the time as well. So I came out and did a Glenfiddich tasting in Vienna, but that might be 25 years ago. So it's long overdue an invite, I think.
Yeah, there you go. We'll honor that invite. So.
We'd all be delighted to come out at some stage. If there's a good reason for us to come out, I'm sure we'd be delighted.
Sounds good. Sounds very good. We'll find a good reason.
Good.
If not, we'll make one up.
Well, we have a good reason in the glass, so we'll join you and share a dram with you in person.
Thank you very much for joining us today. Hey.
Cheers.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. Thanks for having us. It's been great to see you all.
And you're heading off to France now, so okay.
Yeah, we are indeed. David and I are heading to France after this.
There we are. That's it. Another one.
But I guess before we go, I just wanted to say, if you do want to hear any more about the stories, we have a few podcasts, so you can listen to. Kelsey and I last year went to visit Kentucky. We went out to Kentucky to go and visit the Coopers who make the barrels for the Sweet Toast of American Oak. Yeah, so you can have a listen to Kelsey and the team at Kelvin Cooperage out in Kentucky. And then also quite a few of them feature David, of the episodes that we've recorded as well, feature David talking about different processes for the whiskies too. So you can hear interviews with different people involved in each of the whiskies in kind of audio story format. So please have a listen to them at your leisure if you'd like.
Yeah.
We'll definitely do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, good. Hopefully meet up someday in Vienna. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right.
Okay.
Cheers.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks all.
Okay, so I'll see you shortly, Gemma.